reality, truth, and consequences. I'm your host, Mansa M. Backum. This is episode number 8. This is my 8th podcast. So I want to welcome you all and thank you all for spending this time, allowing me to share some words and some thoughts with you. And living with reality, truth, and consequences. This podcast goes out to my family, children, family, friends, associates, people that I know or people that know me, and in that order. This is who this is for, and people that don't know me who may be scrolling through the internet and come across this podcast, I welcome you because this message is pertinent. It's also for you as well. But primarily, it's to family first and friends, associates, etc. There's a lot of information. There's a lot going on in the world. Again, there's always a lot going on, but it seems everything is accelerating. The crime is accelerating. The bank failures, the monies, our finances is accelerating. The agenda of the World Economic Forum, the WHO, the WHO, the World Health Organization, they're pressing their agendas, and their agenda is to depopulate the earth by approximately maybe like 60% of the people by 2030. But I think they're accelerating that because they want it to be quicker than 2030 now, because the people are kind of waking up and seeing that, okay, this is not right here. We've got this transgender thing going on. It started out with so-called quote-unquote gays. People wanted to be able to love who they wanted to love, etc. And the American people, we, in our liberal way of thinking, okay, you do you. You do you, okay, but but that slippery slope, there was no slippery slope, but yes, there was a very slippery slope, because it went from that there, then it went to, well, we want to be able to marry, and then went the church to accept it, which God says these things are an abomination, but anyway, they got some churches to certify this type of behavior. And then we go into the transgender, but they introduced this slowly over a period of time with, in my time, I recall RuPaul. And they say this RuPaul was good looking. That's what they said, And it's a man, drag, adult entertainment. Again, that's been going on for a long time. To each his own. Adult entertainment, y'all do you, But then that drag, it went off into something else, into drag queen story time in the schools and the libraries for children. And there was this San Francisco choir, this all male abomination group. I don't call it, they're not gay, abomination group of males. And they were singing this song that they were coming for our children, that our children belonged to them, that they were going to come and get our children. Think over that. They said they're going to come and get our children, and they have. They are, and they have. And so, and again, this started with some cartoons. I remember this cartoon called Dragon. I don't know, Dragon. Well, I don't think it was Dragon Ball Z. I might be confused with something, but they introduced this dragon like in a fairy tale land. And so now you see these transgender, these drag story time tellers and these drag strippers for children now. they're dressed up and made up in all of this fairy tale fantasy type wear, over and above your normal so-called makeup, women's makeup. But anyway, I don't want to belabor that long. Inception. There was a movie called Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio, and in this movie, they were able to plant thoughts into people's minds as if the people themselves thought that they were thinking of these things themselves. Inception. Well, there was some on some college campuses, and a few journalists went out, and they were raising the question about Trump, and they were all saying how Trump is a racist. He's a racist. He's this and that. And so they just say, and in a non-combative way, they asked, okay, what does he say that's racist? And they would say, well, he said a whole bunch of stuff, a whole lot of stuff, just. And he said, okay, well, give me an example, And none of them, literally none of them could ever give an answer. I'm saying out of the 10, 15 people that they showed, none could give an answer. And a couple of them even stuttered and they stopped and they said, well, I can't think. And he raised the point, the journalist raised the point that they have been incepted. These people are incapable of thinking for themselves. The American population has been dumbed down to such an extent that they really can't think for themselves. They're just being fed information. And they are like children, they're like sponges. They just absorb it without question. One person said that I can't stand no Republicans. They are so racist, they terrorists. And then the question comes to my mind, and I'm not trying to defend no terrorist, nor trying to defend no ugly person. But I say, well, do you remember the Ku Klux Klan? That was started by the Democratic Party, Democrats. And the shooters and mass shooters and stuff, these are Democrats and transgender people who are dissatisfied with their lives. And anyway, it's Democrats, so-called Democrats. But again, I want to get back to the children because what they're doing now, they're chopping off little girls' breasts, cutting them off, mutilating them for life. They're cutting off the male's penis, mutilating young boys, young children, babies even, mutilating them for life. Like a child can make a life-altering decision before they reach the age of so-called puberty, let alone reach the age of 18 or 21. The United Nations now is supporting, and I think they passed a bill where that children or people under the age of 18 can give consensual sex now. They don't say how young, but it's obvious that, a 10-year-old, 8-year-old, 6-year-old, 5-year-old, if they feel like they want to be a different sex, a different gender, I think I'm a woman, or I think I'm a man. I think I want to be a man. There could be a childhood little fantasy tripping in their minds, but the groomers and these teachers, these psychotic teachers, and legislators, I might add, take that and they mold it and they shape it into oh yes, they want to be transitioned. So now they, in some states, they can transition young children without their parents' consent or knowledge. You can send your child to school one day and they may come home later that day or the next day, and Johnny is now Jaleesa, or Pam is now Peter. It's sick. And any of you who think that it is not sick, well, leave me a comment and justify this. And 9 times out of 10, probably 99.99 times out of 10, is going to be a parent that is pushing this on their children, helping to push it. We say reaffirming or affirming their temporary insanity. I want to cover over some things, and I'll go over these things briefly, but because again, I don't want to stay a whole lot of time on one particular thing, because I want you, again, like I say, do your own research. You hear me say something that just sounds really whack and oh, he's got to be talking crazy. Do some research. Do your own research. Do your own research. Don't take my word for it. But hear the word. And if you don't know, you don't have the knowledge, you got a question, go do your research. And then if you find something that I've said that is incorrect, I stand corrected. Because I don't want to be out here spreading, as they say, misinformation. But again, they're changing the language, because now misinformation means anything against what the status quo has said. And even though the status quo changes their mind every 10 days, every 2 weeks, every other month, it's a different story. Like at one time, you don't have to wear a mask, and then another time you need to wear 5 masks. I'm exaggerating. 3 masks. There's no exaggeration there. And then, then the masks really don't do no good. And then but anyway, I'm not going to stay there because YouTube would not let me discuss stuff like that because of the quote unquote experts on one side of the coin. And the other side, the experts on the other side of the coin, well, they're just, they're misinformation. And they are passing laws across the world in different countries, and it's going to be here too, that you do some misinformation and you will go to jail. In fact, that brings me to Senate Bill 686. Senate Bill 686 is called the Restrict Act. Please look it up. Please look up the Restrict Act and read it through. And you will see that they're just going to control every aspect of our lives through the internet, through our cell phones, through our smart meters, through your refrigerator, your thermostat, and your cameras in your house. They have access to all of that. And now we go into the central banking digital currency, which the United Nations has already put theirs out. It's a universal, it's called universal something. Again, do your research. And you don't have to take a whole lot of research. It doesn't take a whole lot. You ain't got to dive into a pile of books this high. No, you can just let your fingers do the walk and let your mouth do the talk, and just say the Restrict Act and see what comes up in your telephone. A lot of us feel like we know what we talking about. Ain't nobody fooling me. Ain't nobody tricking me, Well, for those of us who have a belief in the scriptures, be Christian, Muslim, Jew, Buddhism, Confucianism, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, and more. But these are all scriptures, and they all came from wise and beautiful prophets, and brought beautiful messages. So I don't make no distinction between any of them, because they all point basically to a time and place where we are in right now. So I look for the fulfillment of what they prophesied about in this day and time. Sodom and Gomorrah didn't have nothing on this country right here. Whew. The stuff that they're doing now in the name of equity, in the name of inclusion, it's an abomination. And the southern border, again, forgive me, my mind is moving 1,000 miles an hour, actually 14 billion miles per second. I've been to the moon and back and the sun and back now, even just in that minute of time. Okay. But the southern border, well, there is no more border. I remember back when they were burning down, when Black Lives Matters and Antifa were burning down the cities and stuff, and rioting and killing people, and killing police too, and chanting walking down the street, no borders, no walls, no USA at all. I'm like, wow, what? What do you mean? No borders, no wall, no USA at all. This is the country that allows you to walk down the street and say some stuff like that. But now, you can still go down the street. You can say that, but if someone wants to say that they love the country, they love God, they love Jesus, and they love life, and they don't want little boys and little girls mutilating their bodies before they can even learn how to think for themselves, well, you're going to be harassed. If you protest and if you stand outside of an abortion clinic with just a sign, you ain't got to say nothing. You're called a terrorist. If you go to a school board meeting and you want to question the school board about what's being taught in your classes in your school district, the FBI is called in on you and you're called a domestic terrorist. Those of us who believe in the scriptures, or we'll say with those of us who believe in God, Jesus, who cleanses us, gives us the way to cleanse ourselves. Because Jesus himself does not cleanse us. No. He gives us the way. He shows us the way. He gives us the information and the knowledge that we may cleanse ourselves. But he does not cleanse us, like he's taking the washcloth, No. He gives us the information, gives us the knowledge of ourselves, of who we are. Because you have to remember that Jesus says, if you want to follow me, what do we have to do? He says to deny yourself and pick up your cross. Well, so what? Yeah, pick up your cross. He's carrying his. He's got a cross to carry, and we have a cross to carry too. So this notion that he died for our sins, it's misinterpreted. He died for our sins, He died that we may have a way, to be one with our Lord, to be one with God as he was and is. But he got that way through perfect obedience to God, his Father. The disciples asked him, they said, Master, I'm not quoting the question verbatim, but they said, when will we see the Master? When will we see the Father? Be able to see the Father? Question, something like that. And he responded to him. He said, have I not been with you this long that you have not seen the Father? He said, when you see me, you see the Father. But I and my Father are one. So, taking those words, not trying to interpret them, but just straight words. He said, when you see me, you see the Father. So, clearly he looked just like his Father. May not have been an identical twin, but clearly he was in a human form. In the form of a man and in the form of a woman too. Clearly, what made him able to say such a thing? It was through his perfect obedience. His perfect obedience to the Father, his Father, our Father, which he says, our Father. His perfect obedience. See, we've not been perfectly obedient, and for the most part, we've not even been halfway in any kind of way obedient. We were not chosen because we were good. No, just wipe that out of our minds. We were not chosen to be the chosen people of God, that God would do this mighty work out of our goodness. No, we were chosen out the fiery furnace of affliction. A special people, the black man in America. First, we have this book, Message to the Black Man in America. First. So, first means there's a second, or third, fourth, etc. I am the door, I am the way, the light. And no one gets through to the Father but by me, by my way. And his way was obedience. Obedience. So, if men laying down with men is an abomination to God, and if women lying down with women is an abomination to God, then how is anyone justified in making that right? Through our twisted, deceptive intelligence. Yes, twisted and deceptive intelligence. The serpent came up to Eve in the garden and said, after God gave him instructions not to eat of that tree, because that tree was the knowledge of good and evil. Well, trees don't talk. Snakes don't talk. And trees, they don't talk either, So these are symbols of something or someone. And how was it that as soon as God left the garden after giving instructions to Adam and Eve, then here came the snake, that serpent. And he talks to Eve, they say first, Well, again, snakes don't talk. Where did that snake come from? How did he get in the garden in the first place? These were one of the questions that I've had since I was a child, and I came to my own conclusions at that time, I must say. And after studying the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and listening to the interpretations and the truths that came through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, it reaffirmed, it affirmed, my thoughts. And these thoughts, they're not easily said, to say that if the devil exists, then God made him, for one. But for two, And the grand purpose of God was to study himself, found within himself a side of himself that was not so good. We'll just use that language. And that what he saw in himself that was not so good, it didn't have form or expression. You know, it didn't have shape. It didn't have no substance. It was like spirit. It was buried inside the mind. So one of the wise scientists by the name of Jacob, sometimes referred to in the Bible as Jacob, well, he studied and he found that brown germ or that not so good side, and he grafted it out. It was an experiment on himself. Yeah, the greatest experiments ever was. To pull out of the original man that essence of that was not so good, positive, negative, and to give it form, to give it expression, so that he can see it, that we can see it. We can look at evil. We can look at that which is not good, and gave it power to rule. Yes. For a certain period of time. And we see what type of world that has developed, that has been developed by this man of sin, as the Bible calls it, the son of perdition, the rebel, who wanted to be a God besides God. That was his unforgivable sin. It's not that he was not God or a God, but he wanted to be a God besides God. I'm better than God. You hear that talk right now. I'm not talking about from no bootleg, jackleg preacher or bootleg, jackleg imam. Okay? No. I'm talking about this is coming from the lips of people who are actually in control of things right now, and who is formulating this so-called New World Order, this Great Reset. Klaus Schwab and Yuval Harari. Those type, Bill Gates. Yes, you know, these are your James Bond villains, live and in color. James Bond, by the way, the writer of those movies was an actual British intelligence agent. He wasn't making stuff up out of his mind. These was the type of people that he was encountering and their plans way back then. The Night of the Living Dead. People walking around now like zombies. Again, being incepted. They think they're thinking for themselves, but no. Thoughts have been implanted into their minds, into their dark minds, into their ignorant minds. Well, when God chooses us, then on the other hand, we've been chosen, but to come into the light, now we have to accept. Bring some color to it, yeah. We have to accept. That's why the book says, he who has eyes, let him hear. Not make him hear. Let him hear. Let him see. And ears, let him hear. Mouth, let him speak. A tongue, let him speak. Hands, let him work for himself. Feet, let's get moving, And by putting on the whole armor of God. Again, I just heard today earlier about Jamie Foxx. He's not doing so well. It's kind of shrouded in secrecy what's really going on with him. So they're really not trying to put that out right now. I did mention at the southern border, there is no border. We have so many hordes of people coming in from different parts of the world, and who's paying for this? Where's the money coming from? Oh Lord, now we got money going way over there to Ukraine. Why? 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 Oh, for democracy. Ukraine is not a democratic country. It's a dictatorship. The oldest church, I think, in that hemisphere or in Ukraine, period, Zelensky shut it down. There is no opposition to Zelensky. Yeah, he murdered his opposition. There's no two parties or three in Ukraine. We're talking about this. We're fighting for democracy and lies. Lies. Putin does not want his men thinking that they can be women. Putin does not want his little girls cutting off their breasts, thinking that they're boys, and the boys cutting off their penises, thinking that they would be girls. No. The whole world does not want this madness. I saw recently, I think it was the Canadian legislators in their suits prancing around in pink high heels to show that they are inclusive. And they're inclusive. To the hell? Just like this Navy guy, this recruitment thing, What kind of men are you trying to attract to the Navy? Again, what the hell? But it's clear to see if you have eyes and you will accept the truth. Now that's what we're talking about too. We're talking about knowing the truth, and that truth that will set us free. And are we free? Are you free? Am I free? To a degree. But I say that I'm free to a degree because I have accepted that truth that is making me free. But the scripture puts it this way. It says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. And the following verse it says, because they reject knowledge. Whoa. You mean to tell me that you and I were told the knowledge that we needed to have and we said, I don't want it? Well, that's exactly what happened. And we are continuing to reap the consequences. Living with reality, truth, and consequences. I'm your host, Mbackham. I'm going to take a pause here, and I'll introduce part 2. And in the meantime, I want you to think over these things. Research some of the stuff that I've said. I hope you took some notes, write down little points that may have interested you. If it's just one thing that interests you, just go research that one thing. Prove it or disprove it to yourself, for yourself. And once you have done that, then you have knowledge. Then you have a truth that will set you free.